Ferrari's engineers have made key upgrades to Lewis Hamilton's SF-25. Stick around until the end if you want to discover the details that could crown Hamilton as the champion of the Japanese Grand Prix. Subscribe only if you want Hamilton to win his 8th World Championship and be crowned as the greatest driver in history. Beneath the meticulously secured gates of Marginal, in a fortress of innovation and legacy, behind biometric scanners, reinforced steel doors, and soundproofed walls designed to preserve silence as much as secrecy, a metamorphosis is quietly unfolding, one that may very well redefine not only the fate of Ferrari's 2025 Formula One campaign but the very identity of the team itself. This is not a story unfolding in public. This is not a tale being told in the paddock. This is not an evolution that will be teased in press releases, social media snippets, or orchestrated PR campaigns. This is something deeper. Something foundational. Something existential. The public will not see it. The media cannot cover it. Rivals are completely unaware of its full magnitude. But it is happening. It is unfolding in real time. And it is centered around one of the most scrutinized, criticized, and simultaneously mythologized machines on the grid, the SF-25. For months, speculation surrounding Ferrari has oscillated between disappointment and anticipation, with glimpses of brilliance immediately snuffed out by unreliability, inconsistency, and a kind of strategic vagueness that has plagued the Scuderia for years. The headlines have ranged from cautiously optimistic to outright scathing. Fans have voiced concern. Critics have sharpened their pens. And yet, beneath the radar, under the surface of the chaos, Ferrari has been building, not rebuilding, but rethinking. Rethinking everything. Rethinking who they are. Rethinking what they stand for. Rethinking how they operate. And at the center of this monumental rethink is Lewis Hamilton, a name synonymous with dominance, with excellence, with relentless pursuit of perfection. But here, in Maranello, Hamilton is not just a driver. He is not merely a piece of the puzzle. He is the ignition. He is the fuse. He is the instigator of a process that may turn Ferrari from a legacy team clinging to the past into a future-focused machine of precision, intent, and results. Subscribe only if you want Hamilton to win his 8th World Championship and be crowned as the greatest driver in history. This transformation didn't begin with a public meltdown. It didn't begin with a mechanical failure under the floodlights of Monaco or a controversial strategy call in the final laps of a Grand Prix. No, the true spark came from something infinitely more telling: data inconsistencies, discrepancies, paradoxes, lap after lap of telemetry that didn't add up. A car that looked planted but behaved erratically. Simulations that predicted one behavior and then delivered another. One run would suggest progress, the next would reveal regression. Aero maps didn't match mechanical grip. Tire degradation patterns contradicted the expected load curves. Downforce levels varied inexplicably from one session to the next, even under stable conditions. The car was speaking a language Ferrari couldn't yet understand, and for a team obsessed with clarity, that was the most terrifying variable of all. But it wasn't chaos. It was a mystery. A complex, multi-layered, deeply embedded riddle that required more than just talent or resources to solve. It required total alignment. It required a mindset shift. It required obsession, not with speed, but with understanding. And so, Ferrari turned inward. They didn't lash out. They didn't retreat. They refocused. They disappeared from the narrative, slipped away from the spotlight, and began to work, not quietly, but intensely, fervently, relentlessly. The simulator became their sanctuary. The data became their scripture. Every piece of telemetry, every feedback loop, every comment from Hamilton's on board, every anomaly, every hint of a pattern, it was all fed into a process of deconstruction and reinvention unlike anything Ferrari has attempted in years. Inside the simulator, Hamilton was no longer just the pilot. He became the investigator, the analyst, the architect of a new driving philosophy. He wasn't testing tweaks. He was challenging assumptions. He was digging into the very soul of the SF-25 and asking not how do we go faster, but why do we fail? And with him, Ferrari's engineering core responded in kind. Over a grueling 10-day stretch, 10 days that have already become the stuff of internal legend, the team ran through more than 20 complete setup concepts. Not iterations. Not versions. Entirely separate architectural ideologies. Suspension geometries were recalculated from scratch. Damper curves were redesigned to offer not just compliance but intuitive feedback. Anti-roll systems were rebalanced to allow more progressive transitions between lateral and longitudinal grip loads. Ride heights were adjusted by millimeters, not for speed, but for psychological trust. Hamilton pushed for vertical compliance optimizations that would allow the car to breathe over curbs, absorb variances in asphalt, and still provide the micro-feedback needed for split-second inputs at corner entry. Weight distribution was no longer just a parameter, it became a narrative. A story about front-end grip, about braking feel, about rotation stability under trail braking. The team explored variations in hybrid deployment maps not to chase peak horsepower, but to harmonize torque delivery with chassis behavior mid-corner. Throttle response mapping was adapted to give Hamilton more control in low-speed exits, especially critical in traction zones where the SF-25 had historically struggled. Brake migration was redefined, tailored not just to Lewis's preferences, but to the car's changing aero balance under deceleration. Each of these changes, in isolation, might seem minor, but in aggregate, they represent a philosophical upheaval. The goal was not transformation for transformation's sake. It was reliability, not mechanical reliability, but emotional reliability. A car that responds as expected. A car that behaves intuitively. A car that doesn't just survive a stint but allows the driver to shape it, bend it, trust it. And in the simulator, that car began to emerge. Slowly. Incrementally. Then all at once. The SF-25 began to show signs of life. True life. Not just lap time deltas, but harmony. The kind of harmonic balance between aero, mechanical grip, power unit delivery, and driver input that allows for predictability. And in Formula One, predictability is the foundation of dominance. And yet, Ferrari has told no one. There have been no staged press releases. No cryptic social media posts. No "we found something" quotes from the pit wall. Because they don't need to say it. They are living it. They are breathing it. And Hamilton? He's smiling more. He's standing taller. He's more engaged, more animated, more involved in the technical debriefs than ever before. Because this is what he came for. Not just to drive a red car. Not just to make history. But to build a legacy. And the legacy isn't built on wins alone. It's built in moments like this. Quiet, unseen, uncelebrated. But absolutely essential. The world will catch on soon. They'll see it in the sharper turn-in at Suzuka. They'll feel it in the consistent degradation curves at Barcelona. They'll notice it in the body language, the pit wall calm, the absence of panic. And by the time the rest of the grid realizes what Ferrari has done, what they have built, recalibrated and refined, it might already be too late. Because while others have been chasing upgrades, Ferrari has been chasing understanding. And understanding wins championships. So now the question is not will Ferrari rise? The question is how long before they cannot be stopped. Every configuration, every setup, every change, even the tiniest adjustment, was a story in itself. Some of those stories ended quickly, disappointingly, revealing themselves to be false leads, blind alleys, mechanical mirages. Others unfolded slowly, quietly, offering subtle signs of improvement. A slightly better entry into turn 3. A more confident throttle application out of the hairpin. A tenth gained here, a half-tenth there. Incremental. Measurable. Useful. But not transformative. Not revolutionary. Not it. Not the feeling every great driver is searching for. And then came the configurations. The rare, the special, the magical configurations. That did something different. They didn't just make the car faster. They didn't just stabilize the rear or sharpen the front or balance the load under braking. They gave back something that numbers can't quantify. They gave back a feeling. A feeling that is elusive, sacred, and unmistakable. A feeling that every great champion knows. A feeling that Lewis Hamilton knows better than most. It is the feeling when the car stops pushing back. When it stops resisting. When it stops behaving like a wild animal that has to be tamed corner by corner. And instead it begins to respond, not with hesitation, not with attitude, but with partnership. The feeling when the car becomes an extension of the driver's will. When every input translates into action without friction, without delay, without uncertainty. When the machine disappears and only the driving remains. That feeling is the holy grail. That feeling is what separates a decent car from a winning one. That feeling is what turns hope into belief and belief into domination. That feeling changes everything. And Lewis Hamilton felt it. He felt it in his fingers. He felt it in his feet. He felt it in the weight of the steering wheel, in the way the chassis whispered to him through every subtle change in camber, every bump, every curb. He felt it deep in his instincts, in the silent language between man and machine. According to those closest to the garage, his reaction was immediate. Visceral. Not loud. Not theatrical. Not the wild joy of a race win. It wasn't about celebration. It was about validation. About quiet, overwhelming relief. About the deep cellular recognition that finally, something fundamental had changed. This wasn't just a better lap time. It wasn't just a quicker sector. It wasn't just better tire management or improved aero balance or optimized brake migration. No, it was a transformation of the entire driving experience. For months, Hamilton had been at war with the car, fighting it into every corner, negotiating with it under braking, arguing with it through mid-corner, pleading with it on exit. And for months, the car had responded with resistance, inconsistency, and silence. It wouldn't rotate when asked. It wouldn't hold its line. It wouldn't put power down cleanly. It just wouldn't listen. And now, suddenly, impossibly, it was listening. It was cooperating. It was alive, not in a chaotic way, but in a connected way. There was grip. Real grip. Predictable grip. There was balance. Not just in the data, but in the soul of the machine. There was responsiveness. The kind that allows a driver to push, to attack, to dance on the edge with confidence and without fear. And for Hamilton, a driver who has built a career on mastering that edge, on flirting with the limit without overstepping it, this was not just a technical breakthrough, it was a spiritual reconnection. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, that's where it begins. Because what makes this moment even more extraordinary is how it happened. How this elusive, glorious transformation came to be. It wasn't by chance. It wasn't luck. It wasn't just the engineers plugging in a winning formula by accident. No, this was the result of a shift. A philosophical shift. A procedural shift. A cultural shift. A Ferrari shift. For the first time in what feels like years, Ferrari did not wait for another Sunday of frustration to confront their reality. They didn't hide behind euphemisms. They didn't deflect questions with cliches about long-term development or data collection exercises. They didn't shrug and say, "We'll look into it." Instead, they got serious. They got real. They got involved. And most importantly, they listened. Not just to the numbers. Not just to the simulations. Not just to wind tunnel projections or CFD models. They listened to their driver. To Hamilton. They listened to a man who has spent decades pushing machines to their limits. A man who has more wins than anyone in history. A man who doesn't speak for the sake of ego, but for the sake of progress. They didn't just let him drive. They let him lead. Hamilton became more than a driver. He became a co-creator. A sculptor of performance. A translator between human sensation and mechanical behavior. His feedback didn't just influence decisions, it defined them. His instincts overrode assumptions. His observations questioned trends. His honesty cut through bureaucracy. And Ferrari listened. Not out of desperation, but out of recognition. They recognized that they were no longer in the era where the team dictates and the driver obeys. They recognized that greatness happens when both move together. And in that recognition, something inside Ferrari began to shift. This is a team that has been haunted for years by its own shadow. A team that has flirted with glory and collapsed under the weight of its own expectations. A team that has often seemed more focused on internal politics and public image than on real, gritty, hands-in-the-dirt progress. But now, something is cracking open. Something rigid is softening. Something immovable is beginning to move. There is agility where once there was paralysis. There is humility where once there was pride. There is openness where once there were closed doors. And that change, that willingness to evolve, to adapt, to let the driver lead, might be the most powerful change of all. Because when a team with Ferrari's resources, with Ferrari's history, with Ferrari's mythos, when that team finally aligns itself with a driver like Lewis Hamilton, the consequences are not small. They are seismic. They are championship-defining. They are legacy-altering. This isn't just about going faster next Sunday. This is about building something sustainable. Something real. Something worthy of the badge on the nose of that car. And this moment, this feeling, this breakthrough, it could be the spark that lights the fire. So yes, the car felt different. Yes, the numbers looked better. Yes, the team is more optimistic. But the real victory is deeper. The real story is bigger. This is the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter written by a driver who refused to give up and a team that finally chose to listen. A chapter where man and machine speak the same language again. A chapter where the fight becomes the flow. A chapter where everything, absolutely everything, has changed. As the Formula One world converges on Suzuka, one of the most revered, feared, and technically complex circuits on the calendar, the air is thick with anticipation, tension, and the subtle undercurrent of something bigger stirring beneath the surface. This is not just another race weekend. This is Suzuka. A track that doesn't just test the limits of a car's engineering or a driver's courage, it tests the soul of a team. Suzuka is not the kind of place that offers second chances. There is no hiding in Sector 2. There is no room for hesitation in the SEs. There is no margin for error on the approach to 130R. If your car is unstable, if your aerodynamics are incomplete, if your setup is even a touch-off, Suzuka will expose it, magnify it, and punish it. And yet, it is precisely this unforgiving nature that makes Suzuka the perfect proving ground. For teams searching for answers, for drivers chasing redemption, for engineers hoping to validate the endless hours spent inside wind tunnels and simulators, Suzuka is where theory meets truth. And for Ferrari, more than any other team on the grid, it represents both a challenge and an opportunity. An opportunity to silence doubts. An opportunity to redefine their trajectory. An opportunity to show the world that they are not just participating in this championship, but preparing to shape it. For Lewis Hamilton, this race arrives at a pivotal moment in his partnership with Ferrari. This isn't just a driver coming to grips with a new car. This is a seven-time world champion, arguably the most technically attuned driver of his generation, attempting to mold a car around his precise, demanding, instinct-driven driving style. Hamilton doesn't just drive a car. He communicates with it. He reads tire temperatures like a language. He feels torque shifts in his fingertips. He detects understeer not in degrees of yaw but in milliseconds of delay. And finally, after a painstaking series of simulator sessions, mechanical trials, data overlays, and full system integrations, Ferrari believes it has produced the version of the SF-25 that Hamilton has been waiting for. Not just a faster car. Not just a more stable car. But a car that he can trust, manipulate, predict, and ultimately, dominate with. At the center of this evolution is a radically tailored suspension package, developed not in isolation, but in tandem with Hamilton's personal input. This isn't a speculative upgrade. This is a precision-engineered adaptation designed to minimize lateral instability, suppress abrupt weight transfer under combined load scenarios, and maintain rear grip integrity when Hamilton is at full commitment. Whether it's trail braking into Spoon, dancing through the Degners, or launching out of the Casio Triangle, the goal is singular: give Hamilton a car that sticks. A car that doesn't second-guess. A car that doesn't flinch. And when the suspension speaks, the steering must follow. That's why Ferrari has also implemented updates to the steering feedback system, refining both the mechanical and digital interfaces to create a seamless flow of information between Hamilton's hands and the car's ever-evolving telemetry. Grip levels, battery deployment, torque mapping, tire delta, it all flows to the driver in real time. Hamilton isn't just reacting to the car anymore. He's orchestrating it. Lap after lap, corner after corner, he's able to build a rhythm that is not only faster, but more sustainable, more repeatable, more lethal. Confidence in a car is everything. But predictability? Predictability is the foundation of championship-level performance. And while those changes grab the spotlight, the most quietly transformative updates are happening beneath the car, in places that only the engineers and aerodynamicists can truly appreciate. Adjustments to the floor stiffness, revisions to the underfloor vortex generators, subtle resculpting of the diffuser throat, all of these have been tweaked in pursuit of a smoother airflow transition and more consistent aerodynamic load at varying yaw angles. What does that mean in practice? It means fewer rear-end snaps when Hamilton gets back on the throttle. It means better traction on long exits. It means tires that degrade less aggressively. It means a car that isn't fighting against itself every time it's pushed to the edge. These aren't glamorous upgrades. These aren't headline-grabbing changes that fans can see from the grandstands. But in Formula One, where races are won or lost by tenths of a second over 300 kilometers, it's the subtle details, the microscopic gains, the cumulative efficiencies, the marginal stability improvements, that separate contenders from champions. In a sport where sensational is often overrated, subtle is sometimes superior. And Ferrari, for the first time in a long time, is leaning into that philosophy with quiet confidence. But perhaps the most important change of all isn't mechanical or aerodynamic. It's cultural. It's philosophical. It's emotional. Ferrari has long been described as a team that carries the weight of its own legacy. A team where tradition is both a badge of honor and a shackle. A team with limitless potential, but often self-sabotaged by internal politics, fear of failure, or the inertia of outdated processes. But the past few weeks, particularly the simulator development phase, have revealed a different Ferrari. A Ferrari willing to question itself. A Ferrari willing to adapt. A Ferrari that has begun to prioritize collaboration over control, experimentation over ego, and evolution over preservation. Hamilton didn't need a team that was already perfect. He needed a team that was willing to get its hands dirty. A team that wouldn't just listen to his feedback but would act on it, fast. He needed a team that wouldn't fold under pressure, but instead would find its fire in the face of adversity. And that's what he's getting now. This version of Ferrari, the 2025 Ferrari, is one that is beginning to understand what it means to fight not just with power, but with purpose. Not just with pride, but with unity. So, as the team prepares to roll out of the garage in Suzuka, they do so not just with new parts and new data, but with something far more dangerous: belief. Belief in their driver. Belief in their process. Belief that this might just be the beginning of something real. The journey is still long. The car is still evolving. The championship is still a distant dream. But for the first time all season, Ferrari is showing signs of becoming the team they've always claimed to be. And if they can take that belief, channel it into performance, and allow Hamilton to do what he does best, extract the absolute maximum from every opportunity, then Suzuka won't just be another race on the calendar. It could be the turning point. The moment when everything began to click. The weekend when Ferrari stopped surviving the season and started shaping it. Inside the high-stakes, high-pressure, relentlessly demanding world of Formula One, something is beginning to stir, quietly at first, like a change in the wind before a storm. The atmosphere within the paddock is no longer just tense with anticipation. It's becoming charged, electrified. And not just because of the usual pre-race nerves or media speculation. No, this is something deeper. Something real. Something that's been slowly building, growing behind closed doors, hinted at in whispers, quietly measured in data logs, barely visible in sector times, but now it's beginning to show. Ferrari. The word alone stirs something in any F1 fan, whether it's nostalgia, hope, frustration, or admiration. But this time, it's not about what Ferrari used to be. It's about what they might become. Inside rival garages, engineers are starting to notice. Not in grand, dramatic statements. Not in flashy qualifying positions or bold declarations in press conferences. But in the things that only those who truly understand the sport would see. The long-run pace. The tire degradation. The stability through complex corners. The absence of telltale balance corrections in telemetry data. Quietly, discreetly, opposing teams are beginning to murmur the same thing. Ferrari may have found something. Not top speed. Not raw horsepower. Not DRS advantage. No, this is something more valuable. More elusive. Consistency. The holy grail of race performance. The ability to perform lap after lap, stint after stint, weekend after weekend, without the unpredictable drop-offs that have plagued the team in recent years. In race simulations, Ferrari is showing form that isn't just good, it's sustainable. That's the word that's echoing now, sustainable. Not a flash in the pan. Not a lucky stint. But something they can build on. And at the center of this evolving story is a name that needs no introduction: Lewis Hamilton. For months, maybe even years, pundits, critics, and fans alike have speculated, was Hamilton's best behind him? Was the fire still there? Was he easing into retirement? Was the move to Ferrari a romantic decision rather than a strategic one? But now, those narratives are unraveling. Because what we're seeing, what the data suggests, what insiders are whispering, is something altogether different. Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, the icon, the record breaker, the legend, isn't fading. He's rising. He's sinking with the SF-25 in ways that many thought would take months, maybe even seasons. He's learning the language of the car, and the car, it seems, is starting to speak back. The synergy is growing. Communication between driver and machine is tightening. The trust required to push a car to its absolute limits, through corners like 130R, through the S's at Suzuka, through the high-speed flicks of Silverstone, that trust is forming. And when Hamilton begins to trust the car beneath him, when he feels that the rear will hold, that the front will bite, that the balance will remain through the changing phases of the race, that's when he becomes dangerous. That's when he becomes inevitable. But this is Formula One. And Formula One is never about feelings. It's not about potential. It's not about hope. It's about lap times, sector splits, telemetry, fuel loads, tire temps. It's about cold, hard numbers. Everything Ferrari has built, everything Hamilton is discovering, every shred of progress, none of it means anything until it's proven under the lights. Until the clutch drops. Until the tire rubber scrapes across tarmac. Until a full race distance is completed in dirty air, in changing track conditions, in evolving strategies. Simulations are theory. Track time is truth. And that's where we are now, on the edge. On the edge of confirmation or collapse. This is the moment where fantasy meets friction. Where the story either accelerates into history, or spins into another chapter of what might have been. But something is different this time. You can feel it. The body language in the Ferrari garage is different. The language on team radio has shifted, from hesitant to confident, from experimental to calculated. The feedback loops between Hamilton and his engineers are becoming tighter, more precise, more productive. There is a growing sense of belief. And belief in Formula One is no small thing. Because when a team begins to believe, not just the drivers or the engineers, but every mechanic, every strategist, every aerodynamicist, every logistics coordinator, every simulator driver back in Maranello, that's when momentum becomes a weapon. That's when belief fuels performance. That's when everything begins to align. Not because of luck, but because of execution. High-level execution. Race after race. Lap after lap. Setup refinement. Pit stop precision. Development upgrades delivered on time and working as intended. Data interpreted and acted upon. This is what turns a team into a machine, and Ferrari is starting to look like one. Of course, none of this means the story is already written. This isn't a fairy tale, and Formula One doesn't hand out happy endings without an exacting cost. Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, they're not standing still. They're watching. They're reacting. They're innovating. And they're hungry. One mistake, one misjudged strategy, one mechanical gremlin, and all this momentum can vanish in the blink of an eye. That's the cruel beauty of this sport. It gives, and it takes away, without mercy, without sentiment. And yet, for the first time in a long time, it feels like Ferrari isn't just reacting to the sport. They're shaping it. They're making moves, not just responding to them. They're not a team trying to catch up. They're a team daring to lead. And Hamilton, for his part, doesn't look like a veteran winding down his career. He looks like a predator who's smelled blood in the water. A competitor reborn. A driver who knows that if this is his final act, it might just be his greatest. So now, the question becomes not if something is happening, but what exactly is happening. What if Bahrain wasn't just a strong result, but a signpost? What if Miami wasn't an outlier, but a trend? What if Ferrari has not only closed the gap, but discovered the formula that eluded them for over a decade? What if Hamilton's move wasn't the romantic swan song everyone assumed, but the masterstroke no one saw coming? What if this season isn't just competitive, but transformative? What if everything is about to change? You tell us. Jump into the comments. Share your takes, your theories, your wild predictions. Is Ferrari finally back? Is Hamilton about to rewrite the script on how legends finish their careers? Is this the start of something truly historic? Or just another mirage in the desert of Maranello's ambitions? debate, argue, dream. Because Formula One is nothing without the passion of its fans. And you, yes you, are a part of this story. And if you're the kind of fan who lives for every second, every lap, every update, if you crave the behind-the-scenes secrets, the mid-season upgrades, the mind games between teams, the data-driven drama, and the relentless pursuit of perfection, then this is your place. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Activate every notification. Be here for every development, every twist, every heartbreak, every miracle. Because what's happening now, this is not just a comeback. This could be a resurrection. And it's only just beginning.